Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2623 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, we'll be lacing up our boots and settling out on our trek through powerful opening verses of Psalm 66 from the New Living Translation. Psalm 66 is a magnificent call to worship, a global anthem acknowledging the awesome power and the mighty acts of our God. It's a psalm that would have resonated deeply with the ancient Israelites, a people whose history are marked with divine intervention and miraculous deliverance. As we explore these verses, let's try to hear them through their ears, understanding the context of their world and the sheer wonder they experienced in the face of God's power. We'll be focusing on verses 1 through 7 today, breaking them down to uncover the rich layers of meaning that they hold on our Wisdom Trek today. So open your Bibles or simply open your hearts and your minds as we begin the exploration. Let's start with the first 4 verses of Psalm 66. Shout joyful praises to God, all the earth. Sing about the glory of His name. Make His praises glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Because of your great power, your enemies cringe before you. All the earth bows down to you. They sing praises to you. They sing praises to your name. Selah. What a powerful opening. The very first words of this passage is shout. It isn't a polite suggestion to quietly contemplate. This is a command, a fervent exhortation to all the earth to erupt in joyful praise to God. Imagine a scene in the ancient Israelite worship. While they are certainly moments of quiet reverence and personal prayer, there are also times of exuberant, even boisterous celebration. The Hebrew word for shout is ruah. It's the same word as the war cry or a signal of victory or a trumpet blast announcing a significant event. It's a sound intended to be loud, impactful, and undeniable. In the ancient world, many cultures attributed power to the various gods associated with natural forces, such as the sun, the moon, storms, and rivers. Their worship often involved appeasement or manipulation of these deities. But the psalmist here calls for something entirely different. The call is to the one true God, the God of Israel, and the praise is not for abstract forces, but for concrete, awesome deeds. Think about the ancient context. The Israelites witnessed God's power in ways that would have been unimaginable to other nations. They saw the plagues fall upon Egypt, a direct challenge to defeat the Egyptian pantheon. They saw the Red Sea parted, a divine act that demonstrated God's absolute sovereignty over the most powerful natural elements, the very elements often defied by their neighbors. For them, shouting joyful praises wasn't just an emotional release, it was a declaration of allegiance to God who had demonstrated His power in undeniable ways, rescuing them from slavery and leading them to freedom. The psalmist urges, sing about the glory of His name, make His praises glorious. In the ancient cultures, a name held significant weight. It wasn't just a label, it represented the character, reputation, and authority of that person. To sing about the glory of God's name is to proclaim who He is, His power, His holiness, His faithfulness, and His love. To make His praise glorious is to ensure that our worship is not lackluster or half-hearted. It reflects the magnificent worth of the one we are praising. It should be worship that is fitting to a glorious God. Verse 3 brings us to the content of His glorious praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Now the word awesome here carries a sense of reverential fear and wonder. It speaks of deeds that inspire awe, action, that are so powerful and extraordinary that they leave us humbled and amazed. For the Israelites, these awesome deeds would have immediately brought to mind the events like the Exodus, the crossing of the Jordan River, the conquering of Canaan, and the countless other instances where God had intervened mightily on their behalf. The psalmist makes a bold declaration. Because of your great power, your enemies cringe before you. In the ancient Near East, empires rose and fell based on the military might. Kings boasted of their conquests and the fear they instilled in their foes. But the psalmist attributes this power, this ability to make enemies cower, not to any earthly ruler or army, but to God alone. The Hebrew word translated cringe can also imply a forced submission or a feigned obedience out of fear. This is a powerful distinction. God's power is so overwhelming that even those who oppose Him are compelled to acknowledge His might, even if their hearts remain rebellious. True worship, however, comes from a place of love and a willing adoration, not just fearful submission. And the scope of the worship is vast. All the earth bows down to you. They sing praises to you. They sing praises to your name. This was a truly radical concept in the ancient world. Most religions are tribal or national. The idea that God of Israel is the God of all the earth, and that all the earth would eventually worship him, was a testament to the expansive vision of God's sovereignty held by the psalmist. It's prophetic glimpses of the future where God's glory is recognized globally. Now the word Selah appears at the end of verse 4. It is a musical or liturgical marking, likely indicating a pause for reflection or perhaps a musical interlude. It's a moment where the worshiper is to let the weight of their declaration sink in. Pause and consider. The God of the universe, whose deeds are awesome and whose power makes enemies cringe, is the one to whom we are called to offer joyful and glorious praise. Now let's move on to the next section in verses 5 through 7. Come and see what God has done. He is awesome in his deeds toward everyone. He turned the sea into dry land. They passed through the river on foot. There we rejoiced him. He rules forever by his power. His eyes watch the nations. Let not the rebellious exalt themselves. Selah. The psalmist's transition here is a universal call to praise and a specific invitation. Come and see what God has done. It's an invitation to observe, to witness, to consider the historical evidence of God's power and faithfulness. The focus remains on his awesome deeds, but now there is added another dimension, that he is awesome in his deeds toward everyone. While the initial context likely highlights God's work for Israel, the psalmist's vision expands to encompass his awesome work on behalf of all humanity. He then provides two powerful examples from Israel's history. He turned the sea to dry land, and they passed through the river on foot. These are clear references to the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea during the Exodus from Egypt in Exodus 14, and the crossing of the Jordan River into the Promised Land in Joshua chapter 3. These were not ordinary events. They were moments where God dramatically intervened in the natural world, manipulating water, a force often associated with chaos and unpredictable power in ancient cosmologies, to create a path of salvation for his people. In the ancient world, the sea and powerful rivers were often seen as chaotic forces, sometimes even personified as deities or monsters that they needed to appease. For God to simply turn the sea into dry land and to allow his people to walk through the rushing river on foot was a profound demonstration of his absolute authority over all creation, far surpassing the perceived power of any other gods or natural forces. It's a clear message that the God of Israel was in control. The psalmist includes himself in this historical memory. There we rejoice with him. Even if the psalmist wasn't physically present at the Red Sea or the Jordan, he identified with these experiences of his ancestors. This speaks of the importance of remembering and celebrating God's past faithfulness. Our faith is not based on abstract ideas, but on the concrete history of God's interaction with humanity. We too can say, there we rejoiced in him, as we remember God's work in the lives of those who came before us and even in our own lives. Verse 7 brings us back to the present reality of God's ongoing reign. He rules forever by his power. His eyes watch the nations. God's power wasn't just limited to historical events. This is an eternal and active power. He rules forever. This provides a sense of stability and assurance in a world of constant change and uncertainty. Unlike earthly rulers, whose reigns are temporary, God's dominion is everlasting. Furthermore, his eyes watch the nations. This concept would have held different implications depending on whether you were an Israelite or a member of another nation in the ancient world. For the Israelites, it was a source of comfort and security, knowing that their God was sovereign over all the nations, including those who might pose a threat. For the surrounding nations, it was a sobering thought. Their actions were not unseen. They were under the watchful eye of the all-powerful God of Israel. In a world where empires asserted their dominance and gods were often seen tied to specific territories, the idea of a God who watches all the nations underscored his unique and universal authority. The verses conclude with a warning, let not the rebellious exalt themselves. In light of God's eternal rule and constant observation of the nations, any attempt to rebel against him or to elevate oneself in defiance to his authority is utter folly. Ancient history is filled with examples of rulers and empires who exalted themselves only to crumble under the weight of their own hubris or by the hand of a greater power. The psalmist reminds us that ultimately, true power and authority reside in God alone. Those who rebel against him are on the path to their own downfall. Selah. Another pause, another moment to absorb the truth. God rules. He sees everything. Rebellion is futile. So what can we take away from these opening verses of Psalm 66 on our Wisdom Trek today? Well, firstly, these verses are all powerful. They're a call to active and joyful worship. Our praise should not be a quiet whisper, but a resounding declaration of God's greatness. It should engage our emotion and our voices, reflecting on immense joy that we have knowing Him and witnessing His work. Secondly, we are reminded of the importance of remembering God's deeds. Just as the Israelites look back on the Red Sea and the Jordan River, we should regularly reflect on God's intervention in history and, importantly, in our own lives. What awesome deeds has God performed for you? How has He shown His power and faithfulness? Remembering these things fuels our praise and strengthens our faith. Thirdly, we are called to recognize God's universal sovereignty. He is not just a God of one nation or one group of people. He is God of all the earth. His eyes watch the nations. His rule is eternal. This understanding should humble us and fill us with awe. It also provides a framework of understanding of world events. God is ultimately in control. And finally, there's a clear warning against rebellion and self-exaltation. True wisdom lies in acknowledging God's authority and submitting to His rule, not attempting to elevate ourselves in defiance of Him. As we continue on our individual and collective wisdom treks, let the words of Psalm 66 verses 1 through 7 be a constant reminder to lift up our voices in joyful praise, to remember God's awesome deeds, and to acknowledge His universal reign, and to walk humbly before Him. Let's make our praise glorious, not just in our own words, but in our lives. Lives lived in recognition of His power, His love, and His unwavering faithfulness. Thank you for joining me on this segment of our Wisdom Trek. I trust that you've gained some valuable nuggets of wisdom for our journey today. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend, as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. As we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward. Enjoy your journey and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.